You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devanin, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. I am so damn glad because I have searched all the 9 fucking damn realms to find me a trans person who would be willing and transparent to come on my show and talk about their journey. And I finally did it. Hallelujah, tabernacle and praise. And so his name is Innis. He has transitioned from female to male. And in this show, we're going to get an in-depth discussion of what that journey looks like. We're going to talk about why transitioning is different for each individual. We're going to go over details about top surgery and bottom surgery. We're going to talk about the importance of community during transition. And then we're going to weigh in on the impact of this very recent Roe versus Wade bullshit. So please take a listen to this episode, and I hope you feel the heartfelt love reverberating from this conversation. I would like to welcome everyone to our final Pride episode of the season. Oh, you know what? Fuck that. This is a very Pride specific episode, but it shall not be the last for this year, because I have decided that Pride is supposed to be every goddamn day. And so fuck it. This is just a great one that we're about to do here, but all year long Pride. Viva la Resistance. I'm here with Innis today. How are you doing, Innis?
I am doing great. How are you, Tanner?
Oh, I'm fan fucking tastic, and so great to be hosting my own show where I can cuss all the fuck I want to. I go on other people's shows, and a lot of times they're not as X-rated as I am, and I curtail my behavior because I'm a flexible bitch. But it's always good to just get back home where I can say what the fuck I want. So
Love it.
Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, I appreciate it, because I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, shit, I curse a lot, but I'm glad that I'm on the right platform here, so I don't have to worry about it.
Hell to the no, because it's how people talk, you know? And even people who try to be all cute and shit when they're out in public, when they get home, they say everything. They say the most. So, all right. So what's the
It's true.
point? Right. So what's the point of this show today? It is Wolf, the first person who identifies as transsexual who I've been able to find to be comfortable enough to come on my show and have a discussion about the journey that, this transformation has been. And so, in light of all the ire and the hate that's directed toward the 2S LGBTQIA community, and particularly trans people, trans athletes, all of that, this is a really big deal, and it's a hot topic right now. Give us a brief breakdown of your history and anything you want to say about yourself, to include your pronouns.
My pronouns are he, him, or they is totally fine. I live in the Hudson Valley of New York. I grew up here. I'm actually living in my hometown right now, which is kind of weird. I'm 34 and married, and really, I've been transitioning physically, mentally, really been on that serious path probably for the past 12 years or so. I've definitely been aware that there was something going on, but up until that point, did I really start seriously exploring it and also having the language to really express what was going on with me, and also having community around me to help support me figure that out. So that's kind of been where I'm at now. And, living in my hometown after being here for 30 some odd years is really strange. And I've left and come back a whole bunch of times and essentially kind of almost been a completely different person every single time. So that's been a really interesting experience, especially being here now and being married and kind of being under the radar of every single other person, which is a very empowering, but also very strange experience.
Yeah, because so what you're saying is you would leave and do a few changes and then come back home. And
Mm,
people, especially from my hometown, towns like to talk so much fucking goddamn shit. So like here in the South, when I was in the military, whenever I would come back, if I've gained weight or lost weight, they always want to say something. Ooh, you done picked up, or ooh, you done dropped off. It's gotten to the point now that I've told them all to shut the fuck up. I don't need their goddamn commentary on my weight every time I come and fucking go. Shit. So I can imagine if you're turning from a girl into a boy, as critical as people like to be of people, the shit people must have said to you. Tell me, can you
it's
what yeah, speak on that.
it's so strange. Like, uh, you know, my dad is a really popular person here, and he has all of these friends who are his age who were also like my softball coach, someone that I grew up with, my friend's parents, and to not see them for 5 years or even a year at this point, I just surprised the hell out of them and they don't know what to say. And there's all these, 60 some odd year old dudes who just turn around, they're just like, oh, hi. And I just like, I can tell that they're so fucking uncomfortable and they don't know what to say because they're probably seeing me as, like a 7-year-old girl playing t-ball or something. And then they turn around and I have a fucking mustache and, muscles. And they're just like, they just have no idea how to handle themselves. So it's very weird. And it's also, I see a lot of people from high school, a lot of people that I went to school. I graduated with a lot of people and it's the same thing. People get surprised, they get excited, they're just like, wow, you look so good. Or people just have no idea how to handle themselves. And also people have no idea who I am too. That's the thing. If I haven't seen someone for 10 years, I have to kind of almost make up these stories about where I came from, if I grew up here, when I graduated, because people will be like, "Oh, that was my grade," and then I'm forced to decide if I want to out myself or not, or if I just want to kind of make up a whole other life and see if they catch on or not. It's always a really weird place to be in.
That's some secret agent shit though. It's kind of like you kind of like, okay, you're giving me some Evelyn Salt right now. So
Yeah.
may I ask what your name was when you were a girl?
I prefer not to
Okay.
talk about it, mostly just because it's just kind of a strange thing. It's a strange thing to think that I had a whole different name that people could kind of relate to me with. And I feel like at that point, having the name that I have now, I align so well with that. And not that I feel like I was a different person, but people will relate certain characteristics or things about me at that time with that name. So I kind of just try and just keep that out of, any conversation because it's just way more comfortable.
Okay, no problem at all. So, so you said you were transitioning for 12 years. So, at what point do you feel like it happened that you decided, okay, I'm not going to be a woman anymore? To be getting all the changes and going through those changes that you woke up one day and said, I am officially a man and that old person is gone and I am now Innis.
I definitely feel like my whole life I felt that there was something going on that I just did not really know what it was. So I always felt like I was different from every group out there. It wasn't even just, in elementary school, middle school, hanging out with the boys versus the girls because everything is gender separated at that point when you're in elementary school. I didn't fit in with either group, which it wasn't like I just go into the boys and I felt comfortable and I felt awesome and I felt empowered. It was like, no, no one wanted anything to do with me because I just look different, I act different. And so I knew that there was something going on that whole time. And I just felt other. I felt separate from every other group that was out there. And when I went to college, I started hanging out with a lot of people who were also very weird. And I made a lot of friends who were queer, gay, lesbian, and I made a couple of trans friends. They were really the first people that I was physically around, that I was interacting with, instead of seeing, the random mention on TV or, something like that, where it was usually a parody of a trans person. It was, the trans person was usually butt of a joke. I wasn't in a position in my hometown to even meet a trans person. So when I was finally in an environment with other people, I kind of got an idea of, oh, this is something that I suppose anyone can do. This person just decided at a certain point that this is something that they needed to do. Why can't I do that? And it was really scary because it's really scary to think, okay, well, my whole life I've lived a certain way and I haven't felt comfortable doing it. But the thought of doing this is so much more uncomfortable. At what point do I push myself to go there, to start exploring that, to start even thinking about it? Because thinking about it was scary. So I was dating someone when I was in college and I started doing some really minute things. I did not talk to her about it at all, but just small things like cutting my hair, starting to work out. And she was not into it. It freaked her out. And looking back on it, it's so funny because it's such a subtle thing. People cut their hair all the time. People start going to the gym or working out in their room all the time. But something about it really bothered her. And that created more of a rip than we had before because as far as our relationship was going, it wasn't going great, but she kept pushing me further and further away. And at a certain point, I realized that doing these things for myself to figure out what I needed to do to feel comfortable and to feel good about myself was more important than trying to maintain that relationship with her, where she was consistently pushing me away for wanting to do the best thing for myself. And really, at that point, I was just like, fuck it. I can't do this anymore. And I made a plan to actually move to the Bay Area because I needed to just get out of New York. I needed to get out of my hometown. I was going to college in Albany at the time. I needed to just get out of there and be somewhere where no one knew me. There were a lot of freaks and queers and all sorts of people there that I could feel comfortable with, hopefully. And I kind of gave myself an opportunity to have a whole new life. And I forced myself to do that and take that on and to essentially kind of pretend like I did not have the issues that I had. I did not have that layer of insane discomfort and push beyond that because no one knew my story there. And that was really, really freeing for me to be able to do that.
I say it was a smart move because you went somewhere where you could start over. You could have like a clean slate. And it's a shame that it is this way. You would think that the people we grew up around would be the most flexible with us and love us the most, but it turns out that they're the most harsh and judgmental of us. In the Hebrew Bible, Jesus said it this way: a prophet is not without honor except that is in his own home. because because people that are from our own home ain't got no damn sense. And so, and they like to keep us in boxes and they don't have the expansiveness of mind very often to allow us to change. And so you made a smart move. You went to an open-minded city. It makes perfect sense. You're trying to do an open-minded thing, go somewhere where it's going to work. So talk to me more about the necessity of having a support system. So it sounds like this trans journey is better not done in a vacuum or alone if you can help it.
Yeah, it definitely was really important for me to be around people. And, this was also 12, 13 years ago. So we didn't have the resources online that we have right now or that way to connect with people. It was a lot harder to find information and to become friends with people where I felt that good of a connection that could sustain me. So I'm a type of person who needs to really be around someone or something to learn it. I need to physically do it. I can't just watch it or I can't just read about it and all of a sudden integrate it into my body. I'm very, very physical person when it comes to that type of learning. So for me, I knew that I just needed to expand the possibility of being around a lot of people. And, being in San Francisco proper was great and it was fun. But honestly, I did not see a lot of queers. I did not see a lot of trans people. I saw a lot of lesbians and a lot of gay men. And not until I went to Oakland was actually where I met a lot of queers, trans people, punks, a lot of people who were my age. And that's where I actually found a lot of that support, the majority of that support, and the majority of those examples too, to just be like, oh, you're able to live your life like this. You look super happy. Maybe that's something that I can do myself. And I was also seeing so many different variations of what type of, you know, person could exist out there as far as the gender spectrum too. So I didn't feel like I needed to be stuck into a box because I wasn't all of a sudden, identifying as a woman and then I was identifying as a man. I took a lot of time in between and, I identified as non-binary for a very long time. And I still do, but honestly, at this point in my life, it's safer and easier for me to just identify as a man because when it comes to pronouns, when it comes to all that other stuff, especially here in a, fairly closed-minded town, it's a lot easier to see things on a binary than seeing things on a spectrum. And it doesn't bother me at all when people just identify me directly as a trans man or male, because at this point, honestly, I don't give a fuck. I know who I am. And as long as someone isn't coming up to me and using my dead name and using, she pronouns, I don't fucking care. So for me to have that community and have those people around me, not only supporting me and supporting my journey and not questioning it too, which was a huge thing, not kind of forcing me to do other things than I wanted to do to present myself in different ways than I wanted to, which is things that happened when I was growing up. I was able to really feel comfortable and supported and safe in exploring it because no one gives you a roadmap to this is how you transgender. Like no one says you got to change your clothes, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's something that you kind of approach in a way that is accessible to you, is comfortable to you. There are so many variations and reasons why you may decide to change your clothes or cut your hair or change your name, and the kind of way that goes and the steps that you do are really dependent on, in my opinion, dependent on your environment and what's available to you and accessible to you and what you feel comfortable with. So to be in a place like the Bay Area, like Oakland, where essentially everything was kind of accessible to me was the best choice that I could have made at that point.
Right. And so when you have fully like physically transitioned, you had top surgery, bottom surgery, everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, because I'm hearing what you're saying in terms of the kind of like the variety of what's accessible to people. Sometimes I come across people who've only maybe had, like maybe say a girl transitioning to a guy may have only had the top surgery and things like that in their, at various stages. Some people may not want to go, as far as you've gone, like you're saying, what you're saying is quite perfect. It depends on what's comfortable and then also accessible in terms of healthcare, and everything like that. So I want to talk about the surgeries in particular, but before we get on that, I want to talk about a little bit more about the feelings and emotions just briefly. Like how you were talking about, it feels more comfortable being identified as a man or non-binary. And I love that sexual orientation and gender identity is fluid. So on Monday, I might feel more like a woman and might prefer she. And then on Tuesdays, I might feel more like a guy. And who knows what will be on Wednesday. And I think that that's a very liberating way to be. So it seems like, so I want to be sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So growing up, you were more like confused. You didn't really know where you fit in. You just knew something was different. Now that you are at the point in the transition where you want it to go, where you feel like is the fulfillment for you, it sounds like you don't have any confusion anymore. Is that accurate?
I don't have any confusion, but thinking about how I feel about gender and my own body, I still kind of have no fucking idea. And it's not that I'm confused. I've just kind of let go of searching so strongly all the time, which can become really exhausting. And at this point now in my life, I really feel like it's just going to go the way that it's going to go. And I'm more comfortable with just allowing things to happen instead of forcing them to happen. And that may be because I've been doing this for so long or because I'm so fucking tired or whatever reason is. But yeah, I don't feel confused. I just kind of feel like almost like nothing. Like everything and nothing exists at the same time. And I'm just gonna be open and okay with what's happening. But at this point where I am now, I do feel way more comfortable than I did 5, 10 years ago.
Hmm. I hear what you're saying because how shall I say this? You learn to let go of like a certain expectation upon yourself. Because I think that's a wise thing to do because oftentimes we fall into a trap of trying to find, you know, a way to describe ourselves or a way to categorize ourselves. And what we're searching for is something that society may have put in us, something someone may have told us. And things get down into our subconscious. It seeps into our subconscious whether we realize it or not. From movies we watch, the off the cuff things people say as we're on the subway or on the train or whatever the case may be. And so I think it's a smart thing to abandon a need to identify every little fucking thing about ourselves. If it gets frustrating, you always have a right to just be. So I think that you're in a very good spot right now. Okay.
Yeah. That that need to identify every single little thing has been so exhausting. And I know that it could be really empowering for people at the beginning when, all of a sudden you realize you're gay or all of a sudden you realize you're trans and you're just like, holy shit, I have this word. Now I have this community. I've unlocked so many different things. But where do I fit into that? And having to identify all of those little things is kind of makes you feel so great. You're like, okay, I'm gay, I'm a bear, I'm a top, like you start going into these little boxes and you feel so great about it. But at this point now, I've packed all of the boxes, I've unpacked all of the boxes, and I'm just fucking tired. So I don't feel the need to have to do that anymore. And I also feel like I've established myself with my family, with my friends, with my community into a place where I feel like I am also being seen in a way that makes me feel good too. So I don't feel like I constantly have to push myself out there and say, I am XYZ, which is really a really nice place to be.
I love how personal this trans journey is. Because so much of what you're saying in is being very clear on who you are, what you want, what's going to work, what's not going to work. This trans journey looks completely different for everybody, although there may be some intersectionality. But what I'm mainly hearing is you got to know you. You got to get clear on who you are and be sure that what you want to do and the changes you want to make are because you want to make them. Okay. So for the surgeries, we're going to talk about the top surgery, then we're going to talk about the bottom surgeries, then we're going to talk about the mental health aspect in that order, unless we catch the Holy Ghost and decide to spin all over the place, which is also cool. so, so talk to me about the top surgery. How did that go? What happened?
So I decided to have top surgery about around 2015 or so. And I never felt comfortable with my breasts at all. It was just something that happened during puberty that I was like, okay, I guess this is what my body's going to do. And I couldn't do anything about it. And luckily for me, I had a very small chest. I'm sure if I had a larger chest, it would have been more difficult for me. And I didn't hate my body. It was just that I was like, this is in my head, this is not how I see what my upper body is, supposed to look like. And I actually had not started testosterone yet at all. I had top surgery before I did that. A lot of people do that. A lot of people start testosterone beforehand. And I went to a surgeon, and I've now found out, is a fairly awful surgeon who spreads a lot of lies about a lot of her procedures to try and get more clients and patients. She took care of me fairly well, but she failed to tell me that everyone in the surgery center was sick with the flu when I was having surgery. So I actually got the flu as I was recovering from top surgery, which, I had never had a major surgery in my life. I didn't know how it was going to go, but dealing with coughing and having a fever and having all that stuff that comes along with the flu while I had stitches on my chest, I was coughing up against a pillow so that I wouldn't pop any of my stitches. And finally, when we were able to get a hold of her, because of course my wife couldn't get a hold of her on the phone at all. She's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, everyone at the surgery center, they have the flu." And I was just like, "Bitch, I don't even fucking have health care. And you're just gonna casually say, oh yeah, everyone has the flu. You probably have the flu. Like, no shit, I have 103 fever." So we were scrambling to try and figure out how to take care of having the flu, as well as taking care of all of my wounds and sutures and all of that stuff that's going on. And having these surgeries, you have to be active in wound care and taking care of that, making sure your bandages are clean and clear, and you usually have these drains that you have to strip with fluid and blood in it. So it's a really intimidating thing. And for me, if I didn't have my wife with me, if I didn't have someone like that caring for me, I don't know what I would have done. But it was kind of the first thing that I did that I knew felt right for myself. And to be totally honest, like, I did not feel good or comfortable with my chest until probably about like at least 2 to 3 years afterwards. And for me, I'm really slow to change and feeling comfortable with change. And such a large change like that, it's something that I envisioned in my head for so long that I wanted. But once it had actually happened, I was like, shit, this is not, I'm like thinking in my head, when I have these nice pecs, I'm going to just like look really strong and hot, and my chest was concave because I had no muscle underneath. And at a certain point, like right after surgery, once all the swelling was done, you could actually see my heart kind of pumping. You could see everything moving underneath because I had such a lack of fat and muscle. And it was really fucking scary. And it was not at all what I thought was going to happen. So after that, it's like, okay, do I want to go on testosterone to kind of help bulk myself up and change these things? Because I know that will change, because all of the working out in the world, I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix this. So it kind of like spurred me feeling more comfortable to start testosterone because there were certain things now after having this large change that I was like, I really feel like starting testosterone, having chest hair, having the ability to grow and build muscle more easily would really help me feel better. So it kind of like opened up the gate for essentially more medical procedures.
I agree with you that that doctor who gave you the flu is a total batch. BETCH. He's a fucking batch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and a cunt
Unbelievable.
and a cunt to boot. And a cunt.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I am so sorry that all of that happened to you, but I appreciate your transparency and being willing to tell other people about this. So in hindsight, would you if somebody else was considering going down the female to male journey, do you think it is a good idea to get the testosterone first, or would you still do it after? And I know everybody's
Uh,
body is different and there's gonna be variables, but
yeah, that's really it. It's honestly like there's no real way to do this. You can start testosterone, you could have top surgery first, you could have bottom surgery first. It's not a linear thing at all. And it's also depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to just not have breasts, just get rid of your breasts. You don't have to be on testosterone. You don't have to have these other procedures because it's really about how you're feeling. For me, I was so hesitant to start testosterone because all of a sudden I felt like I was going to wake up the next day and have a beard and look completely different, which is not what happens, by the way. And I was just terrified to do that. And I actually started on a very low dose for over a year of testosterone, just so that if I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore, a lot of the changes that happened during that time, would be not very noticeable because I was really honestly worried about the mental aspects of it, how it would affect how I felt about myself or my thought patterns or anything like that. So it really, like we said before, depends on what's accessible to you. If you have healthcare, if you don't, if you have surgeons near you, because there are a lot of parts of the United States and elsewhere that you might not have a great surgeon and you might not want to go to that person. So, trying to figure out if you want to go across state lines, travel, if you want to pay out of pocket for certain procedures, it's a lot to have to really take on and decide. And medical system now is honestly a lot better than it was then, and it's easier to get information. But at that time I really felt like I was just scouring the internet for anything that I possibly could, and of course I go to the one surgeon who's just like a pure fucking bitch, but I had no idea. But you know what, she gave me a test that now, many years later, I feel pretty good about. But in retrospect, if I could have done things differently, hell yeah, I would have done them differently. But this is where I am now.
yes, he has very good looking chest. I personally think Ennis is super fucking hot and he can stick his dick in me he can stick his dick in me any day. Which brings us to the bottom surgeries. Tell us, how was the dick created? We want to know.
Well, there are a lot of different kinds, but I could talk about my surgery specifically. I had phalloplasty, and that means that I use a donor site from one portion of my body to create the actual phallus. So you could, there's a couple of different kinds. What most people choose is to use their arm or their leg as their donor site. So essentially, you kind of clear out a spot on your body however large your surgeon is going to say, 6 inches by 6 inches, 7 inches by 7 inches, and you start with hair removal because if you don't, you're going to have a hairy penis. And some people may be okay with that, some might not. But the point is also it helps with healing, it helps with complications. I did 34 hours of electrolysis and I probably cleared out maybe half of my hair. So if you think about that, costs a couple $1,000 and about a year, and I still did not do all of the hair removal that I needed to. Luckily, I haven't had any sort of complications because of that, but when you choose to have bottom surgery, it's kind of like an a la carte thing. You can choose what procedures you want in addition to creating the penis itself. So there's creating the penis, there's scrotoplasty, where you create a scrotal sac. And in the future, if you decide to get an erectile device, essentially you will end up getting implants inside of that sac to fill out this and have more prominent testicles. There's glandsplasty, which creates the head of the penis itself. These are all things that you can choose if you want or not. And the big thing is urethral lengthening, which means either you're going to pee out of your penis or not. And there are a lot of ways to reroute your urethra to maybe you'll end up urinating out of the bottom of your penis, behind your scrotum. It really depends on where your anatomy is and also what your goals are. Some people don't care about sitting to pee after all of that because a lot of the complications right now for phalloplasty are within the urethral lengthening. And myself personally, I've had 4 procedures after having urethral lengthening to fix my peen right now because I get to a certain point where I almost can't pee due to tissue growth on the inside of my urethra. And then they remove it and hope that it doesn't grow again. But so far in the past, 7 months or so after my last surgery, I've had to have a couple of fixes. So it's a lot and it's a massive, massive recovery time. But yeah, essentially for myself, I used my leg because I didn't want to risk any sort of damage to my hands. I work in fine art and I really needed to be able to not worry about swelling from my hands or any sort of issues that would impact my and using my leg. A lot of people actually are not good candidates because of the amount of fat on their leg. What they'll end up doing is cut out a large group of skin and the fat down to your muscle, and then that gets rolled up into a tube, essentially. That tube gets stitched onto your body, and then you heal that. And all different surgeons, you may do scrotoplasty at the same time. You may only do that. I've had 3 surgeries so far out of 4, hopefully. And I started it in October 2020. So I actually started kind of like, you know, height of COVID in New York for sure. It was a pretty scary time to be in the hospital and also taking on this huge, crazy procedure.
Okay. What I'm thinking as you're saying that, and again, I appreciate you so much. For the people who like to hate like trans people and things like that, for to be willing to go through everything that you have described today in order to achieve your truest, highest self, you know, your haters couldn't go through all of that. You know, it's much easier to set back somewhere and to just say all trans people are the devil or whatever the case may be. It's Beelzebub or whatever. But but the person who has compassion and mercy and empathy is going to actually, look at what all you're talking about today and just throw all kinds of love your way because you were so unhappy that you're willing to go through all of this, just to get some goddamn peace. This is, somebody in your position doesn't need anybody closing any doors in their face or trying to make life harder for them. I just wanted to say that, and I don't really spend a whole lot of time, you know, worrying too much about like the haters and stuff out there and, our Republicans. not our Republicans, them damn Republicans, and and people like that because they're not my ministry. My ministry are people who are about to transition, people who've been discarded and rejected by society. You are my focus, not people who think they have their shit together enough to be judging and coming for other people. But for whatever it might be worth, I had a dream the other night, morning, or whatever, that it was like Republicans and like your evangelicals, like those that class of people who are very hateful towards people, and they don't seem to see any fault in it. It's like I heard him sing a song, and it's like they were trying to figure out how they went so wrong, and what they could do different towards the people who they used to inflict. So it's all in my dream, of the song that they were singing it seems to speak that God may be bringing a change to some of these people's hearts, and I'm just gonna like leave that there. And and so whew, there's a lot of so we're gonna move on from the bottom surgery. I will say this. Can I tell people about your website?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So his website, and I usually would save this till the end, but this is like the perfect time right now. It's called inniswolf.com. That's INNISWOLF.com. Can I tell them about the Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then there's Instagram.com/InnisWolf. Of course, all of this will go in the showy notes as it always does. And he has delighted us with a delicious and delectable photo journey. Oh my God, I'm so excited of his transition. Of his transition. I really, really love Dick. I'm a total bottom combo, and and your dick is quite
I
dope.
had no idea.
Oh my God, your dick is so pretty. And you like,
Thank you.
and there's a photo journal documenting his transition, y'all. So you can go in there and see the changes as they happen. And I believe you have a contact form in there too. So that if someone may have a question or concern, you can actually reach out to Ennis, and he can tell you what you need to know or do. And so I have a little question before we move on to the mental health about the D. Now,
Mhm.
some men that I have been with in my day have given their dicks nickname. I was fucking, there was a guy who I was hanging out with, and his dick's nickname was Kermit, and so he would have died before I ever, of course, I never spoke this, to any of his friends or nothing like that. This was for Bowden. So I was just wondering if maybe your dick has a nickname.
No one has ever asked me that, and I appreciate it more than you will ever know. It doesn't have a nickname, but my wife and I joke a lot that it's the $1 million dick because we've been adding up how much these procedures have been costing, and we're at like the halfway mark right now. So my assumption is that by the time I'm done, we're going to be real close to, 3/4 or $1 million. And yeah, it's a real expensive dick.
$1 million dick. I have a feeling that may make its way into the show title for this one. Okay, so let's talk about mental health, because it was in our pre-call that we had before this, the mental health aspect of this and the way therapists play into transitioning was incredibly important to you. And so I really want you to just give you the floor and talk to us about why, if people are going to transition, mental health is so crucial.
For me specifically, being isolated in a community where there weren't any other people that I could really talk to about this, where I didn't have other trans people. Like, I know it sounds silly, but I'm like the only trans person I know here out of 35,000 people. And I'm sure they exist, but I haven't met them yet. So it's like I'm really, really isolated. And my wife doesn't want to hear all of my complaints because she hears 90% of them all the time. So it's like, I'm going to save a portion of them for someone else so that she doesn't kick me out of the house. And I really, I needed to find someone who I could trust and who I could talk to, and my choices here were, okay, you get in the car and you drive for an hour. You get in the car and you drive for 2 hours. I've been going down to New York City this entire time that I've lived here to just get my health care. And obviously, there's a lot of mental health care there, but I can't drive, I can't take my whole day essentially and pay a shit ton of money just to get down to the city to speak to someone about this. It would actually be worse than being able to talk to someone. So I needed to actually speak to a therapist to get letters for these surgeries because there are certain procedures that you need to get letters for. My top surgery, my hysterectomy, which I got before bottom surgery, and bottom surgery all required letters from mental health professionals, and usually more than one. And that's standard. That's pretty much anyone. So I was seeing a therapist kind of over the border in Jersey for a while, and she was she was great, but she was really geared towards children, and she kind of had a lot of clients who were kids or teenagers, and that's also kind of what her office looked like. That's also kind of how she spoke to you. And it was kind of good for me in the beginning because I'm like, essentially, I'm a child, essentially, I'm going through puberty all over again. Essentially, I'm doing these things that, a boy would have done when he was 13, 14, whatever. So I'm like, maybe this is fitting. But after a couple of years, I was like, I can't spend all this money going all the way there to kind of just be treated like a child and deal with a few of the issues that I have and go home and think about it for 2 weeks. It wasn't working out for me. So what ended up actually happening was when COVID really became a thing, telehealth really became a thing. And, you have BetterHelp and all of these mental health groups now that are online. And that was really a huge game changer for me. Being able to look online and see who actually, worked with LGBTQA people, who worked with trans people, who, had any sort of knowledge or basis of clients, anything like that. I was able to pick and choose. And my therapist now actually, I think I'm her only trans client, but at this point in my life, a lot of my issues that I have are also just kind of very general issues, not specific to me being trans. And she's been really good about a lot of that stuff. And she is knowledgeable. She does work with, the community, but I feel like it kind of feels more of like a partnership and a mutual thing at this point where I'm not just educating a therapist, where I'm not just having a therapist that's only rooted in gender stuff. There's a lot more give and take, and there's a lot more exchanging of information than I had in the past, which makes me feel really comfortable because honestly, like all of my issues aren't trans based. All of my issues aren't just about my surgeries. And to be able to not hyper focus on that has been really good for me. But there was a time in my life where I did need to hyper focus on that. Every single thing about my life and all of my issues were about being trans and about gender and about surgery, and being able to talk to someone about that who wasn't a friend, wasn't a family, wasn't someone part of my community who didn't know my shit really made me feel comfortable to just let it all out. And it was really, really helpful for me to be able to do that, to feel comfortable and to feel supported by someone who didn't know anything about me.
I'm curious, and it's the letters that you had to get from the mental health professional in order to get the top and bottom surgery. What sort of information would be in it?
The information that would be in it is essentially saying that you are mentally sound and able to make these choices for yourself. Because obviously, having bottom surgery has so many surgeries that you're really being assessed about if you're going to be able to take that on. And it's not only just yourself mentally, but do you have a support system? Do you have a caretaker? Do you have people around you who are going to be able to caretake for you mentally, physically? So it's really speaking to your therapist or psychiatrist or whoever it is and making a plan for being able to have these surgeries and go into it feeling good, go through it feeling good, and to continue living your life knowing that you had a plan, even if things go wrong, because things come up that you don't expect. But just knowing that you were prepared for this and having essentially an assessment by a mental health professional who said, yeah, I think that you're able to take this on. And especially if it's someone who you have been to a lot and who you've spoken to a lot, that's someone who can definitely assess and say yes or no. So those are required by surgeons to be able to get a lot of these surgeries.
Okay. Thank you for the breakdown. I appreciate how thorough the process is. Okay. So the last two items, politics and religion. So Roe v. Wade just got kicked in the nutsack the other day by our ratchet ass Supreme Court, or at least conservatives. And how gross is it that Clarence Thomas, of all damn people, wants to lecture people on sexual relations? He looked like he ain't fucked ever. The people who are the grossest want to tell us what we can and can't do with our penises and vaginas and assholes and mouths and hands and ears and eyes and
Yep.
noses and everything. Oh, hell no. What do you
No, no.
think about the future of trans rights in light of this Roe v. Wade fucker?
This is a really huge blow to a lot of things. And it's not only the rights that are being taken away, but it's also confidence, it's planning, it's people's futures, having surgery, going through whatever a trans person decides to do. It's not like you could decide you want to have surgery and it happens tomorrow. There are so many things that you have to plan for, and it takes years and years and years that to have to be in this position right now where, yes, there may be trans rights that may be taken away or change healthcare. How the fuck are you supposed to plan for that? How are you supposed to, plan your life around these things that you're anticipating happening, or maybe you're in the middle of, and you don't know if it's going to be there next month or not? And I felt a lot similar, but in a different way during the last administration. It's kind of like every single day I was fucking freaking out about whether or not this thing was going to get taken away from me. This thing was going to get taken away from me. My marriage was going to, be garbage. It was just all of the things that I worked so hard for 4 years. I was terrified about if they were going to be taken away. And even just a really good example is I had a hysterectomy. So I'm on testosterone. I need to have hormones in my body all the time because if I don't, essentially, I'm just going to go right into menopause. And I'm not going to feel good about that. And then I'm also going to have to decide, okay, do I need to take estrogen now because I have no hormones in my body if I'm not able to access testosterone, which throws away however many years of my life that I had been working towards my body and my mental health and been on this plan. So it's really fucking scary. And there are a lot of people who are working on this who are, the ACLU. There are so many groups of people who are fighting against this. And the whole thing is we can't leave this just up to those people. You have to If you have money, you got to donate it. You have to give it to the people who are doing this work because you're not going up to Clarence Thompson being like, hey, can you change this? You know, can I slip you 20 under the table? Can you fix these things? There are so many people who need to go through these procedures, bring up these lawsuits, figure out triage essentially how to deal with what's happening right now in if there is a possibility that certain things are going to be taken away because it is happening. And I know for me specifically being in New York, I'm protected in a lot of ways, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. And it is really fucking scary. And the only thing that I could say is, you know, for trans people specifically, do the things that you know that you can do that will give you some sense of security. If you haven't changed your name and it's something that you want to do it now. If you haven't changed your gender and it's something that you're thinking about doing, do it now. If you aren't on a wait list for a surgery that you've been thinking about, just get on the wait list. You don't have to commit to anything, but kind of setting ourselves up for the things that we can, and then also supporting our community in the ways that we can by donating money to the people who are actually fighting these things, by, you know, raising awareness, and by also talking to people who aren't a part of our community because, you know, maybe this isn't going to matter to my family because it's not directly affecting them, but it's affecting me. And you kind of have to raise the point about, okay, well, do you really care about me? Because if not, you're showing it because you're not doing anything. If you do care about it, you have to think about who you're voting for. You have to think about where your money is going. You have to think about if you're showing up to protests or talks or whatever it is. And just being a physical body, showing that you're not going to stand for this shit because trans people are fucking tired. Queers are fucking tired. A whole group of the LGBTQIA community is fucking tired. And it's not fair to just expect us to take care of all of these things ourselves. It's like having, you know, women's rights with Roe. This also affects trans people. There are a lot of people who want to get pregnant. Those people may not access abortion now. Those people may not be able to access certain reproductive rights. So it's not just specific to women. There are so many non-binary people. There are so many trans men. There are so many transmasculine people who want to be able to, you know, have a baby, access these types of services, and also can't now. So it's so important for the people who know that this is an issue and really feel passionate about it to know that it's also affecting trans people as well.
Gosh, that sounded like the benediction on a Sunday morning. You broke it the fuck down. Mm, I'm just gonna, you mentioned speaking to people who are not of our community, you know. So I'm just gonna remind the hateful bitches of this one thing right here. And so, it is no human has a right to control and corral another. None of us are righteous enough to find fault in other people. So much of the gospels are centered around anti hypocrisy. And the moment any of us think that we are righteous enough to straighten someone else out, we become a hypocrite because no one can judge us but God. So we cannot judge ourselves righteous. The perfect example of this for me is the whole road to Damascus conversion thing. And, everybody gets all giddy because Paul was changed, but my mind is on what he was on his way to do. So what he did was he went and got the politicians, the religious leaders of the land, the Sanhedrin, to give him legal backing to go and force people to act like he thought they should be acting, and which is exactly what the Supreme Court just did. They allowed a law to pass because Republicans want to force people to act a certain way. Same shit Saul did, and Jesus himself said, "Bitch, don't do that." It's really just that simple. And so that's my last word for the day. What would you like to say? And then I'm not going to say shit else because I already told people where to find you. Inniswolf.com, Instagram.com/Inniswolf. It'll go in the show notes. Take us home.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff because my wife said yesterday, I was like, I'm kind of nervous about this. There's so many things that I feel really passionate about, and we're really only like scraping the surface. Just, but you love to talk about yourself. And I was like, okay, okay. All right. So here we are talking about it. But these questions and these issues are really the important things. And these are things that happen in my life. These are things that happen in so many other trans and non binary people's lives that a lot of people aren't aware of. People are like, oh, you had surgery. Yeah, I had surgery and I was out of work for 3 months and it cost me XYZ and it was really hard and it was all those things, but they just take it at face value. And it's like a double-edged sword where someone may see you and say, wow, you were so brave and strong and you did all these things and it's amazing. It's like, yes, but I also really suffered during it. It was also very, very difficult, but I also had to do it for survival. That's the difference. Is so many people just go through the world not thinking about how they need to survive. They're thinking about how they're thriving. They're thinking about how to get to the next thing, how to get the next car, how to get the next house, how to, you know, do whatever they're working on. And there are so many people, myself included, where I'm not necessarily worrying about like, oh shit, I want to have this great career and I want to have XYZ. It's like, no, I just want to feel like I don't want to claw my skin off. And that's what my focus is to really just feel good in my body right now. And has kind of almost put me in a position where all of those other things that other people have or they're working on right now, I'm not even there. And that's a very strange thing to think about when I think about my peers and I think about my friends and my family. They're not even concerned with this stuff. And the one thing that I could say is, that's probably something that cis people should kind of think about once in a while is we're in so many different places in our lives. And the fact that being trans can take a financial toll, it could take a mental toll, it takes a physical toll, you know, it takes a lot. And a lot of people are tired and a lot of people struggle with this process. And as a cis person, especially as a straight person, those people would just be sensitive to that and more aware and think about, hey, if I was just in the hospital for a week, or hey, if I was just out of work for 2 months because I had this huge procedure that essentially changed a major body part, how the fuck would I feel? Is everything going to be all right? Probably not. So check in on your trans friends, check in on your non binary friends, bring them fucking dinner, take them out, pay for their shit, donate to them, and do that specifically to your Black and Brown and Indigenous trans friends because they need it more than fucking anyone. And if you don't have any of those friends, go online, do a little Google, and donate. Donate your money to the people who need it because more than likely they're going through something that you can't even imagine and they need support. And financial support, honestly, is one of the best ways that you could show that you care and that you're showing up. And just being there for someone makes a huge difference. And I know specifically for myself, I just want to be seen. I just want to be seen as a person. And that really is my goal. And when the rest of the world, with everything that's going on right now, does not see me as a person, does not see women as people, does not, so many people feel invisible right now. And the people who have the privilege to not worry about that and have feet on the ground and feel good about themselves, just try and spread that around a little bit because it makes a huge difference.
Amen and amen. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm going to put the ACLU in the show notes as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at devannon@sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.